Solo Nezarec is one of the most annoying challenges I've done in Destiny 2. While running it for the past week, I've had a lot of people ask me how it compares to Solo Atheon, to which I've been responding that the mechanical skill required to do Nezarec is lower, while the RNG and amount of nonsense that occurs is much higher. There are 3 different stages to this challenge: nodes, damage, and final stand. The hardest part of this challenge is dealing enough damage to have a comfortable final stand, and even if you deal cracked damage, final stand is still an entirely different beast and there's still RNG required there. The way this video is going to work is I will discuss the loadouts required, and then I will discuss how to do each section with examples of each section being completed. For this challenge, there are 6 different loadouts that you will want set up. The first loadout is your reserves or ammo loadout, and so this is what you will start each run with, and you will equip it after each damage phase is completed. For this, your primary, you're going to want anything with lead from gold or a blinding GL or wither horde. Your secondary should either be a shoot to loot trace rifle like the Path of Least Resistance or the Iterative Loop with lead from gold, and then your rocket will maintain its spot in your heavy. The mods that you would want here are shown on screen, and the important ones to note are Arc Scavenger, Arc Reserves, and if you're using Blowout, you need 2 Arc Reserves. If you're using Hothead, you need 3, and then you can just run other scavengers as needed. The second loadout that you need is the one for running the nodes. So for the nodes, there are 3 different setups that people have used to clear Nezarec. Setup 1, which is the most common build people have been using, is the Sunbracers build. So this requires a Blinding GL, Ariana's Vow, and a Rocket. Mods are shown on screen right now, and so you want Ashes to Assets, Bolstering Detonation, Firepower, Momentum Transfer. You want Void and Concussive, and then 1 Solar Reserves, and you can swap this Solar Reserves for an Arc Resist, but I found Solar Reserves is much nicer for ensuring you have enough ammo for Final Stand. Legs, you're going to want Recuperation, Invigoration, and Arc Scav, and again, you could swap this Invigoration for Solar Scav if you wanted. And then on your class item, you're going to want a Double Outreach and Special Finisher. Now, when I was watching other people do this, I noticed a lot of people were using Healthy Finisher here, but I really don't see why you wouldn't just use Special Finisher. I've seen so many people wipe due to not having enough ammo for Final Stand, and I'm just thinking, wow, you could have solved this issue if you actually had Special Finisher on instead of this useless Healthy Finisher. For the subclass, you're going to want Ember of Resolves, Ashes, Solace, and Empyrean. Resolve is optional here, and I actually swapped this for Wonder when I was doing it just to get extra resilience. I do not recommend you use Mercy because when you pick up a Fire Sprite, it lowers your restoration time. I've seen people use Ember of Torches here too, but that is useless. If you're using Sunbracers, you want Touch of Flame, Incinerator Snap, and Icarus Dash. In terms of armor, you're going to want at least 1 piece of raid armor with the Release Recover armor mod. If you have 4 armor mods, you get Restoration X2, however, any lower is Restoration X1, so if you're really worried about survivability, make sure you focus on getting that X2. X2 is not needed though. I did this challenge using only 1 armor piece, and that was the Bond. The second setup that you could use is Firebolt Grenades. So this is the setup that I used during my clear, and as far as I know, at the time that I'm writing this, only myself and Vendetta have used this loadout. Almost everyone else uses Sunbracers. I preferred this setup over the Sunbracers because I found that getting through the nodes on the second and third phase is a bit tougher with Sunbracers because you're more restricted on time, so I opted to use Transversive Steps instead for speed. The armor mods, again, they're shown on screen here. You want Solar Siphon, Ashes to Assets, Firepower, Bolstering Detonation, Concussive Dampener, Void Resist, Solar Reserves again. And then I use Solar Scav and Arc Scav. I definitely would recommend you use Solar Scav if you're using Firebolts because you're going to be using more Ariana shots to make orbs. Recuperation is great here as well. Bomber, Reaper, Special Finisher, and Release Recover were on my class item. So when I did this, I used Empyrean, Ashes, Wonder, and Solace as my fragments. I really liked Wonder with Firebolts because when you get that ignition off, you spawn in 3 orbs of power. The third setup that you could use is Dead Messenger, and I do not recommend this loadout because it messes you up in terms of special ammo for Final Stand, and you're using a sniper to try to hit Nezarec's crits, and that just puts you at such an ammo disadvantage. This is the same loadout as before, but you would run Transversive Steps or Rain of Fire. But again, I strongly recommend not using this loadout, so I'm not really going to go into more detail on this, but you would use Defiance of Yasmin, Dead Messenger, and a Rocket. The third loadout you're going to need is a Felwinter's Helm. So this loadout, in your kinetic, you're going to want a GL or a Sniper to help weaken the Colossus. Another good option here if you want is Forerunner, but Forerunner, I found sometimes I was dealing too much damage to the Colossus. Your secondary, I would recommend Iterative Loop here with Volt Shot, because you can also use this to help weaken the Colossus. But be careful here, because Iterative Loop causes significant health bar desync on this Colossus. And then your Rocket should be equipped again. Mods, again, shown on screen. Important mods to have here are Stacks on Stacks and Grenade Kickstart, or just something else to hold your armor charges. Just make sure you don't use whatever it is you're using to store your armor charges on this setup. You're also going to definitely want Proximity Ward on your class item so that you gain that overshield when you're finishing the Colossus. I also used Arc Reserves here just in case I picked up a Special Brick or Heavy Brick and I needed the ammo. The fourth loadout that you're going to be using is your damage loadout. So this should be Wither Horde, Iterative Loop with Volt Shot, and a Rocket. Important mods to have here are 2x Arc Loader and Arc Dexterity, 3x Arc Surges, and 2x Time Dilation. I've seen people use the seasonal grenade launcher here as well, Prodigal's Return, I think it's called. It is nowhere near as good as the fusion rifle for applying Volt Shot, and you will find that you have a miserable time trying to apply Volt Shot with this GL. The fusion rifle is so much more consistent. I highly recommend you just use Iterative Loop, and when you're finished your damage rotation, which we'll be discussing later, you actually have a weapon that you can use for damage as well on the boss. The last two loadouts are your final stand loadouts. So loadout number 5 is Tractor Cannon. So you're going to want a shotgun, you're going to want Iterative Loop with backup mag. You need to make sure that this has backup mag equipped. If you do not have backup mag on this loadout, you will be in despair. The other mods that are important here is that you have Healing Rift equipped with Lunafaction boots, you still want Fusion Grenades equipped, and you might want Void Dexterity. Nothing else here really matters. And then the last loadout is Merciless. Shotgun, Merciless, Hothead. The most important items here are the Rain of Fire boots to apply Radiant using Merciless. You're also going to want triple Solar Surge, 2x Time Dilation, 2x Solar Reloader, and Solar Dexterity. Completing the nodes is the first part of this challenge. To do this part, you can start by placing a Well of Radiance on the second light node, and then you start on dark side. Activate the first dark node, then head over to light side and activate the second light node. While staying in your Well of Radiance, you can shoot his 2 shoulders to identify the refuge color and then shoot his chest. At this point, it becomes a bit of a choose-your-own adventure, as there are 4 different possibilities for how to continue this fight depending on what the color of the refuges are. The first possibility is light, then dark. If the first refuge is light, swap to dark side and complete 2 more nodes, 3A and 3B. Then, grab the buff and create a refuge on light side number 2 and complete 2 more nodes there, 3A and 3B. By this point, he should have done or is just now doing his white mechanic. At this point, you can shoot his shoulders and chest again. If the second refuge is dark, complete 2 more light nodes, kill the light Colossus, and then create a dark refuge and work on completing dark. Just remember to re-grab the refuge when needed. If Nezarec is glowing and you have less than 10 seconds of refuge, it's a good idea to re-grab the refuge. Shoot his crit again, finish dark, head to light side, and finish light to get ready for damage. In the background, playing now is a full light then dark node completion. Unfortunately, I had to head over here, which sucks because that's going to send one back to spawn. I love just randomly getting suppressed by the boss. We're still on this, bro? So Tarek beat this last week. If the second refuge is light, you want to complete 2 more light nodes, then a dark node, then create the light refuge, kill the light colossus, and then head back to dark. Again, just keep an eye on the refuge timer. I highly recommend you do 2 nodes before you swap sides because it will lower the chances that a node returns to spawn. You can also kill the light colossus while doing these 2 nodes, but you'll be more restricted on time this way. So if you choose to do this, you may need to skip doing the dark node and do 2 light nodes, then create a refuge and swap back to dark. Once the 2 light nodes are done, make your way back to dark and work on those, making sure to shoot his crit again and stun him when hatred begins. Finish dark, finish light, get ready for damage. In the background playing is the second half of a light then light completion. I was like, I didn't feel slow, but yeah, I realized I went for the finish first. Oh, 37k, not doing damage. Shifu, honestly, at this point when I see clears, I just get so sad, and like the only one that I won't be sad when I see is yours. I will be completely honest. So I'm just like, wow, another person who's not getting scammed as hard as me or Shifu. That's literally just what goes through my mind right now when I see clears. The third possibility is dark then dark. If the first refuge is dark, stay on light and complete 2 more light nodes, shifting the buff forward to position 2. At this point, you can take the buff to dark to create a refuge and then complete 2 more nodes, 3A and 3B. This means by the time Nezarec explodes, you should have completed 6 nodes. At this point, you can shoot his shoulders again and then his chest. This refuge is also dark, complete 1 more dark node, then a light node, kill the light colossus, and then create a refuge and complete the last 2 dark nodes. You could complete 2 dark nodes, then a light node, but you'll normally want to kill the light colossus on round 2, so only doing 1 dark node is much less time restrictive, especially if you're using sun bracers. Dark then dark is in my opinion the worst RNG that you can have during this encounter. If the second shoulder is light, complete 2 more dark nodes, then create a light refuge and complete 2 more light nodes, while also killing the light colossus. By the time your second light node finishes, Nezarec should have already completed his white mechanic, so make your way to dark. Shoot his crit, finish dark, and then finish light and get ready for damage. Dark then light is, in my opinion, the best RNG that you can have. The reason I preferred setup 2 was because transversive steps let me do the nodes more quickly due to the increased movement capabilities that T-steps grants you. Sunbracers is much better for ad clear, and I'm not denying that, and it's also much better for creating orbs, but if you find you're really struggling to complete the nodes on time, try the T-steps Firebolt loadout. While doing nodes, if you notice you're below 13 Ariana's Vow shots, you need to do a special finisher. 13 Ariana's Vow will translate to 8 Iterative Loop shots, which is enough to do a Volt Shot reload. If you have lower than 13, you'll only get 7 and you won't be able to reload the Iterative Loop. That being said, you want surges for damage too, so if you do a special finisher, make sure you're doing it early enough that you're entering the damage phase with 3 surges, which is easily done by throwing a Firebolt grenade or a Sunbracer grenade and just picking up the Fire Sprite, an orb of power that's generated. Once the final node is activated, throw a grenade towards middle or towards the legionaries on your side to extend restoration to 10 or 12 seconds depending on whether or not you're using Solace or not. You can use Ariana's too, but again, make sure you have at least 13 shots after using it. If it's third phase, you'll need at least 27 shots, so be careful. At this point, you'll either want to weaken the Colossus and then swap to Felwinters, or swap to Felwinters and then weaken the Colossus. I recommend you swap to Felwinters and then weaken the Colossus, because that way you can panic finish him if needed, and that way you're not also doing a swap in front of a Colossus. Damage will start approximately 18 seconds after you activate the last node, so you'll want to finish the Colossus about 13 seconds after you finish the last node. I would usually use my restoration timer and finish him at around 4 seconds to gauge the time, but just use your judgment here. When the Colossus is next to the flower, you can do it later. However, if the Colossus just took an airplane and is on a different continent, you'll need to do it much sooner. This is also why I would recommend killing the Colossus during the second part of a node run, because that would respawn the Colossus closer to the damage plate, allowing for a closer finisher, allowing for a longer debuff. But again, sometimes the Colossus still gets on an airplane and goes to a different continent. While you are finishing the Colossus, this is when you would swap to your damage loadout. Once you're exited the finisher animation and your inventory, run to the flower and use your Iterative Loop to kill a legionary, reload, and turn around to the boss. Once the boss does his animation, blast him with a fusion shot, then a Wither Horde as he's floating, and place a Well of Radiance on the back left of the flower. This is shown on screen right now. You can swap the fusion and Wither Horde and do the Wither Horde first, but I found it's much more consistent the other way. At this point comes the damage rotation, in which you'll want to do as follows in the following video. You want to do damage from that back left spot because I found it's the most consistent at ensuring Nezarec doesn't teleport or be weird during the damage phase. He'll still do it, but it's much more consistent. Once damage is done, you'll want to swap to your reserves loadout, grab ammo, and get ready to repeat. Now, also, sometimes Nezarec will not do his animation to start damage. This usually happens when he does a melee attack on you when he was about to start damage. So again, at around that 18-second marker. You can tell if he is in damage if his shoulders are glowing. If you can see his shoulders glowing, he is in damage. Other things to note here is if you are on the flower waiting for Nezarec to start damage and he does a jump to you, turn around and jump up top to Nezarec's spawn location until Nezarec lands, and then drop down. If you don't do this, you will get launched off the map and you will scream. The second and third set of nodes are harder than the first set because you're more restricted on time. On the first set, from the moment the fight begins, you have 1 minute until his first explosion, and then you have 45 seconds, and then you have about 42 seconds. On the second and third phases, from the moment the seed spawns in, you only have 53 seconds, but then 45 seconds and another 42 seconds. Because of this, you have to be a little bit quicker on the second and third set of nodes. For these two sets, I recommend you grab the buff, shoot his shoulders, and then activate the first node, and shoot his crit while crossing sides. You should aim to complete the same number of nodes as before here, which will be a bit tougher, but the best piece of advice I can give here is to continue doing nodes until he's about to do his hatred mechanic. Once he does his explosion, it takes about 15 seconds for him to begin his next hatred mechanic, so that gives you 15 seconds to get caught up on any nodes that you can. Just remember to shoot his shoulders as well. Remember to continue to create orbs if you're using an explosive light rocket, and do special finishers as needed. If you're using sunbracers, again you'll find it easier to create orbs due to firepower. However, again, you're slower at running the nodes, so you just figure out what works best for you. Damage in Phase 2 is identical to Phase 1. Nodes Part 3, 3rd DPS, and Final Stand are the hardest parts of this solo. You want as much Merciless for Final Stand as possible. 17 is ideal. To get 17 Merciless, you need to have 17 Iterative Loop with backup mag on. To get 17 Iterative Loop, you need a minimum of 27 Ariana's Vow shots. This means that if you're using Solar Reserves, you have 7 Ariana's Vow buffer to use. This is why I highly recommend that you use Solar Reserves while running nodes and Special Finisher to ensure that you have enough ammo for Final Stand. As you activate the final node going into damage phase 3, I recommend you launch a grenade all the way to dark side to kill those legionaries to extend your restoration, unless you have full Ariana's Vow ammo and want to risk killing a couple on the light side. I don't recommend throwing your grenade to middle, and I'll explain why shortly. Your loadout for damage phase 3 and your setup is the same. The only difference is, unless needed, you do not want to apply Volt Shot. My rule for not applying Volt Shot was if he's in the space in between the F and the C or lower. The reason I don't recommend throwing your grenade to middle is because if the legionaries on your side die, which is almost guaranteed if you apply Volt Shot, and even if you don't, sometimes they just suicide, you need those enemies in middle to proc Merciless. So throwing your grenade all the way to dark is just used as a safety measure. Obviously you can risk it and throw it to middle and hope for the best, but I have lost final stands before by not having any legionaries in mid to reproc Merciless and none on light side stay alive. Like, where are the other legionaries? Why was there only one Colossus for me to kill? Where were the other legionaries? Legionaries don't suicide challenge. Impossible. Third damage phase is the epitome of Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, whether this includes Nezarec just flying away at spawn, him becoming a child and visiting a bouncy castle, him deciding to stand on the plate that you do DPS from, him becoming the dodgeball world champion and being able to dodge everything that you throw at him, you just spontaneously combusting, and so on. You want to save at least one rocket in your mag to do Final Stand, and the best way to do Final Stand is to ego it and just hope that you sent him because you need to be ready. The best piece of advice I can give here is when he is close to being sent, to stick him with a Wither Horde, swap to your rocket, and throw a grenade. As soon as the grenade leaves your hand, go into your menu and swap to the Tractor Can loadout. Once you leave your inventory, if he is sent, Tractor him, place a Healing Rift, and while you're in the Rift animation, swap to Merciless. If he is not sent, shoot him with a shotgun, and then Tractor him, place the Healing Rift, and while you're in the animation, swap. Ideally, if he does not get sent, you sent him using the Tractor Cannon. Once you're on Merciless, kill a Legionary, reload to proc Impetus, and then just hold down the trigger. You want to be using the full auto setting here, as I know some people have failed by not using full auto here. Once you have one shot left in your mag, kill a second Legionary, reload, and repeat. Once you get around to 2 to 3 shots left in the second mag, start walking forward to force Nezarec to do a ground slam. This will extend the DPS phase by a second or two. Once out of Merciless ammo, swap to your shotgun and go to town. The Wastelander from Dares with Vorpal is a great choice here, and if you don't own it, you can kill with Heritage, as that's what I use, but it's much more annoying. You need to kill Nezarec before he does his flying animation, or else you will be sad. Also, sometimes he doesn't even do his flying animation. My first final stand failed that way. I hope this helps anyone who is running this, or anyone who just wants to learn more about Solo Nezarec. Enjoy.